Morning, everyone, or Saturday morning. Here we go. It's Getting Back to Zero. I'm Jeff G. Glad to see you. Calling from sunny 4th of July weekend here in Cincinnati. I have a great Saturday morning superstar to join us for our Saturday morning SuperStart. I ran into Cierra on Instagram, and we're going to share her Instagram location in a little bit, but she is probably one of the most positive, uplifting, inspirational posts. She's always moving, for one, which exhausts me, but she's always, I just really wanted to hear her story. So I've heard a little bit about it, but this is going to be a first time for me as well. But I want to start the 4th of July weekend off. Oh, God, that's corny. I was just going to say with a bang. How's that for 4th of July corniness? Right now, my wife is upstairs just rolling her eyes going, yep, my husband's a dork. Yeah, hi, honey. We're gonna start the 4th of July interview with a bang. So welcome, Cierra. And you are from Razorback country, correct?
I am. I'm from Northwest Arkansas.
Well, welcome to Getting Back to Zero. I'm glad you joined us. So let's just start with your story. How did you end up on a show about sobriety?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. So I am a little over 4 months sober, 126 days today. And I really just, I didn't think that my story would go anywhere, to be honest. I tried for at least 2 years to change my drinking habits and get sober, and nothing really ever worked for me. And after one night of drinking, I woke up and I was just like, I cannot do this anymore. And I did what I always did when I was depressed and hungover, and started scrolling my phone and searched sober on Instagram. And I found a couple of different pages and reached out to some people and just had some honest conversations. And so I decided to make my own sober Instagram to really kind of hold myself accountable and share things that I wasn't ready to share with people in my regular life or my normal life. And so I created a page, not even thinking that, I'd have 10 people follow or want to listen to me. And I just started making posts about like real thoughts that I have. I mean, I don't plan out any of my posts. Typically, like when I post something, it's just a thought that's been running through my brain. And for me, like if I hold on to those thoughts, it keeps me stuck in my bad habits. And so I have to find an outlet to get them out. And Instagram has really helped me process some thoughts and work through some really hard feelings. So here I am 126 days later.
What's the actual date? So someone's going to go, what is it?
February 27th, 2021.
Okay, that's awesome. The Instagram thing, I'm starting to dabble with that as well. I always carry, I don't have it here, it's in the truck, but a little book with me where I write down when a thought comes in, because my memory, it's like, man, that was a good one. And I get home and I can't remember. It was the one that was going to save the world, and I can't remember it. So the Instagram, I'm starting to just show the world what a dork I am, but with the story or whatnot, just to be able to click it and say, the thought of the day or where I am. Like you said, voicing it out, talking, we think all the time, but when you actually speak, you hear a voice. I think there's something to it. I jumped out of an airplane years ago, and they instructed you to yell the commands, even though you're yelling it to yourself. The instead of thinking of it, you verbalized them out loud, because in an emergency, when you're actually hearing commands what to do, you actually hear it, you listen, you're hearing a voice, you're more responsive. So it kind of makes sense with, vocalizing it, whether it's to someone or to yourself, it's still, you're hearing it. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So that's what I do whenever if I'm going through a tough thought, I'll write a letter, whether it be to me or to a person that I'm upset with, or somebody that I've hurt, or, anything. And I'll write a letter and I'll read it out loud, because like it just gives it a voice and it gets it out, and it helps me to process. So that's one of my biggest processing outlets is definitely writing and reading it out loud and just getting it out of me.
I don't know where it's going or what the science is behind it, but I believe that we have energy in us, because energy makes me feel tense, energy makes me feel anxious, whatever.
Yep.
And if you exercise to get it out, but verbalizing is a way to physically get that energy out of your body. And when I think about it, I'm not releasing that energy. And when I actually get it out, I had someone that's been on the show before. I loved what she said, because she said she came home on a Friday and was wanting to drink, and she started yelling in the house. And I thought, oh, I could just see this. It would have been great to have it on film. But, saying, what happens then? How are you going to feel? She was asking herself questions, looking in the mirror, actually, and she said it drained her, and she felt, she was then able to relax. She got that out. So I'm a huge fan of that. But going back, when did you look like you're 17? So I'm going to say you've been drinking for at least a year, but when did you start, and what was the progression for you?
Well, I am actually about to be 29, but thank you. And I started drinking. I mean, I really didn't drink as a young teenager or anything. I wasn't the kid that partied, but I started drinking when I was about probably 18 or 19, and I would go out to the clubs. Of course, we couldn't drink at the club, so we would drink before we went, and it was always too much, too fast. And so I don't think that I ever had a healthy relationship with alcohol, but I wasn't able to process and recognize that. I remember the first party I ever did go to, I think I had 2 drinks, and I completely blacked out and ended up falling out of my friend's car and rolling down a hill. So I should have known in that moment that me and alcohol did not go together.
Was it always a fun, or was it a problem solver from the start?
It started out fun. It started out, this is us doing what young 20-year-olds do, or so I thought. And then as the years went by and heartbreak and trauma and all of these things happened in my life, it became something that I used to not think about those feelings. And it became something that I worked in a restaurant for 6 years, and we would drink after good shifts. We would drink after bad shifts. We would drink on our days off, and so it just really exposed me to that heavy drinking lifestyle. Because before that, I would drink, but only, on occasion. But as soon as I started waitressing, it was just an all the time kind of free for all. And that's all I saw. And, growing up, I didn't see anybody with healthy alcohol relationships. And so, there was no clear cut line of I have a problem. It took me a long time to realize that my drinking habits weren't healthy. They weren't normal, and my mom, who is 4 years sober now, after she got sober, I would call her crying after I would be blacked out or whatever, bad night happened, or I'd call her hungover, and she would tell me I was an alcoholic, and I would shut her down. And I would always tell her, that's your story. That's not my story. And I would get so angry at her because I wasn't ready to hear that I had a drinking problem. I was like, I'm 24, I'm 25. I'm not an alcoholic. Like, this is just what people do in their 20s. This is normal. And that's the thing that bothers me the most, is that in our society, it has become so normalized. I mean, you see meme accounts and you see all these drinking like jokes on shirts and napkins and all, it's so normalized for people to be blacked out or drinking all the time, or to need wine at 5 o'clock, or, it's just so ingrained into every part of our culture that it is hard to recognize that this isn't normal or okay behavior when you do have a problem, and there are people that can moderate, but a lot more of us can't than we even are ready to talk about.
Jesse and Cindy, I know you're watching, and they're laughing right now because this is before you haven't been, had seen the show, but I have heard more people from the food industry talking about after work drinking. And it's like the food industry is almost, it's not a good one to get in if you have maybe alcohol abuse in your family.
No, it's not, but it's so easy, and it's so easy to fall into that pattern. And, you serve drunk people all night. I worked in mostly like bar heavy environments. So you're serving people that are getting drunk all night, and then you're frustrated or you're happy or you made a bunch of money. And so, especially when I worked in College Town, down in Fayetteville, I worked right on Dixon, which is our bar street. And, it was just normal. You go out after work or you get to drink for free. So why not, and, you live close enough, you can walk or you can Uber, and it's just not, yeah, you're right. It's not something that you should get into if you have an alcohol problem, because it's.
Don't forget, I want to get back to your earlier days, but the relationship with your mom. Well, let's just jump in. Relationship with your mom. I never. I'm sorry. Did you say something?
No, my dog barked.
No, I know. I'm just kidding. My mom and dad. My parents. I never would have called and said I'm hungover. That was and alcoholism is in my family.
Yeah.
I never would have admitted that stuff. I never talked about it, and that's to me. It sounds unique that you had that relationship, especially if you knew your mom had a drinking problem, and was in. I would hide it even more. That's really fantastic, but.
Yeah, we have always had, growing up, I was primarily just like with my mom. So we have a very close relationship, a very close bond. We did have our rough patches when she was in the thick of her addiction. And even when she went to rehab, there was this point like where I wasn't speaking to her, and I didn't want to help write a letter or do anything for her, because I was so angry in that moment just from growing up and, and the things that we went through. But my brother called me and he asked me to write my mom a letter, and I wrote her a letter about everything and every way that I was hurt by her alcohol use. And I never thought that I would see myself kind of in the same position. I didn't go to rehab or work any programs, but I was blind to the fact that I was following in the same footsteps for a long time because I didn't want to see it. That's really all it boils down to, is I just didn't want to see it. But I've always, that letter that I wrote her was kind of the reason that she's still sober today. She's told me that multiple times, and, we've since really transcended in our relationship, and we're even closer now than we ever were. And so, calling her in those moments, I knew she would understand what I was feeling when I woke up and I was disappointed in myself. And I would always tell her I'm going to quit drinking, and, she would be a support system for me. But yeah, it's a unique relationship for sure.
Do you remember any of the key points or things that you said in that letter that impacted her?
I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you. It was definitely one of those emotional letters that I probably in a normal situation wouldn't have ever sent. So it was like every thought and feeling and emotion that I've had felt for years. And I don't remember anything specifically.
One of the regulars on this group has 2 daughters, and she found while moving a couple letters that were written to her. And I said, I would love to share those or share part of them on the page, because they, the way she said, Jeff, I can't even read them myself, let alone, it just really, and I guess it was a couple of years before she finally quit drinking, but really just wiped her out.
Yeah.
And, my relationship with my parents was I never, it was anger. And now I'm in that guilt stage, because the anger that I felt for parents that drank, now I'm going, well, what are my kids thinking about me? And so now it's like, oh God, it's the same thing. And I've worked with that, and my parents were the best, but as a younger kid, you don't see that until later, I guess, is something. So only thing I noticed was things I didn't like. And that's a whole nother topic, but so that's a neat relationship, and to be able to do that. So you got the college days, you're going. When did things make that transition? Because I remember for me, it was anxiety and panic attacks when drinking went from fun to medicinal. It was still fun, but it was also very medicinal.
I honestly, there was definitely a shift from when it went from a fun thing to a masking kind of situation for me. And when I do I don't talk about my story very often, but when I do, I started at rock bottom. I didn't hit rock bottom and come out of being a drunk person. Like, I started at rock bottom. I went through a really hard breakup and didn't have the emotional maturity to deal with it. I was 20, I think I was 24, 25. And one night I was drinking by myself at a restaurant and then continued drinking and then drove my car, totaled it, and got lucky. I didn't get in trouble. I didn't hurt myself. I didn't hurt anybody else. I mean, I had my airbags and everything go off, and I have a scar on my wrist, so I'm forever reminded of my stupidity.
You know what? Lucky you that you have that scar. That is.
So I think that is where it really started for me, turning into an abusive relationship, and not just I'm drinking with coworkers after work or like a normal 20-year-old. At that point, I had so much trauma and pain and anger and sadness and just everything. And I didn't recognize that I was depressed. And then I was drinking more and more and more often. And I was a blackout queen, and nobody could ever tell that I was blacked out. And that was a problem because, even after I wrecked my car, it was a long time, but when I started to drive again, even years after I wrecked my car, I knew that I just didn't have any control, and I didn't have any control. And I wasn't ever willing to admit that, because I would get in arguments with people and be like, I'm fine. Meanwhile, the next morning I'm looking outside to see if I drove my car, because I was not there. I was blacked out, but I've always presented myself like I wasn't. And so it was, I wasn't the type of person that looked like I had a problem, but I drank nonstop. Like, if I started drinking, there was never a situation when I just had one. I mean, it was very, very few and far between that I ever had one drink. And then I would start drinking, and then I would just drink like I was a 400-pound man, and I'm not. I'm a little girl. And so I would just drink until I don't even know, like, because I rarely ever threw up or anything like that, but I just would drink until I fell asleep, I guess. And
my kids didn't even know. That's how good I was. Now, I could handle. I drank a bare minimum 24 beers a day, and that was bare minimum 360. I'll give myself one day a year for being sick, but 364 days a year, I drank at least a case of beer minimum. And my kids, they did not really even aware that. I mean, my wife wasn't even aware of the numbers that I drank. She still to this day said I never. That's how. But I worked my ass off to hide it.
Yeah.
And to sneak it and to get rid of cans. And it was exhausting to do that.
Yeah, I had roommates for a while, and I lived alone too. And so, like, really in the thick of all of it, I never really hid that I was drinking, but I was surrounded by other people that were always drinking. And so I didn't really have to hide anything, because other people were always drinking too. And so, they didn't maybe know like what time I started drinking or how much I drank after or anything like that. But I never felt like I had to hide it up until kind of the last part. Like, I live alone, and I would like come home and I'd buy a box of wine to try to budget. And that box of wine would be gone in 2 days, and like, that's a lot of wine to drink. And, it'd be like, I'm just going to have a drink after work because today was stressful. And then I'm going to take a bubble bath, and I'm going to have more wine, but I would pour it up to the top. And then I would be like, well, now I need a third glass of wine. And then I need to go to sleep. So now I need a fourth glass of wine. And it never stopped. And if I opened a bottle of wine, I couldn't leave an open bottle of wine.
I got rid of the last day before I finally was done. I had to get rid of every beer in the house because I would have been tempted by them. So I got rid of them. And you know how I got rid of them? So I wouldn't be tempted by them. I drank them. That makes sense.
Sometimes have said, this is my last day drinking, and poured out a 12-pack of beer. I mean, and then I get mad, and then I go buy a bottle of tequila because I poured out all my beer. There have been so many times, it took me 2 years to quit drinking. And there were so many times that I was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'd wake up after doing something embarrassing or realize I drove my car, and I just would be crying and depressed and sad. And I'm like, I can't drink anymore, but there's alcohol in here, so I have to drink it all, and then I'm done. Or I'm going to pour this out right now, and then I'm done. I've poured out so many bottles of vodka. It's even funny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just to go buy more.
Yeah.
And then I'm mad because I wasted money that I just poured down the sink.
Oh, I was a police officer found me dumping a case of beer, and I thought I'm in trouble. And I told him that I found it that it was my son's, and I was showing him like, you know what, you bring beer into my house, because I was afraid I was going to get busted. I'm sure I'd been drinking at the time, and so I blamed it on my kid, which he doesn't know to this day. And it's like, yeah, I just threw you under the bus because to hide my own.
Yeah,
it's crazy. So did you? Alcohol is alcohol, but you hear. Did different types of booze, the hard stuff like tequila, send you over the edge in a different way? I never know how that works.
Yeah. Honestly, I could get drunk off anything, and I could get blacked out off anything.
Okay.
Towards the end of my drinking, a bottle of wine, I would be blacked out. But I mean, that just says more about the brain damage that I did for myself than anything else. But when I first started recognizing that I had a problem, I used to drink double Jamesons and Sprite, like a splash of Sprite. And that would be my go-to drink after work, or, and then I started getting really mean and hateful and just like confrontational. And luckily I've never actually been in a fight, but there have been a lot of situations I probably should have got my ass kicked, to be honest with you.
See, I always you hear that certain alcohol makes you I get angry.
Yeah.
And alcohol is alcohol. I don't know where the true facts or the science behind that.
Yeah, I don't know
if there is.
I think it's just because I drink maybe even more volume of it. Even, and I just drink it faster. I always told my friends, when I'm blacked out, because I'm going to walk up to the bar and order a double Jameson and Sprite, because at that point, I was like, I don't drink whiskey. I can drink anything but whiskey, and then it was, I can drink only beer and wine. And then it was like, well, none of that's actually working, so I'm just going to drink it all. But that was always my tell, when I was too drunk, if I'd walk up to the bar and I'd order a double Jameson and Sprite, because I'd cut myself off from whiskey.
Were those your the only reason I probably am sitting here today and not either dead or in jail is because I stuck with beer, and I love beer. It's my choice, but I always, because I knew I had a propensity for alcoholism, I thought, if I could take this flask of booze and sneak around the corner, but to get the same amount of alcohol with beer is a lot of volume, a lot of work, and that was my only hope. So I stayed away from the hard stuff, and that might have kept me out of jail. It didn't, stop me from hitting a bottom, but I don't know. That was the only moderation attempt that might have even delayed the process for me.
Yeah, it didn't matter for me. I mean, I would sit and drink a 12-pack of Corona, by myself. So I would buy it in the morning and be gone by the afternoon on a day off, So it didn't matter what kind of alcohol it was. It all affected me the same, and it all was just a mask to hide my emotions. And so, yeah, I don't have a choice necessarily, but
Were you drinking alone always, or from the start, or did that progress? I mean, because I forever drinking in the morning. Are you nuts? And then it was like not drinking in the morning. Are you nuts? When you could start the day off with this?
Yeah.
It spiraled.
Yeah, I would wake up in the morning on a weekend, if it was Saturday or Sunday, it's all bets are off. I'm going to pop open that bottle of champagne and I'm going to be drinking it. So, I drank alone a lot, but I also drank socially a lot too. So I was a little bit of mixture. I liked alcohol, and I didn't see the effects that it was having on me. So
who saw the negatives or the serious negatives? You first, or did loved ones or friends see it first?
I think my mom saw it first, and my best friend. I would talk openly to both of them about what I was struggling with, but I don't know that they ever noticed the volume of what I was drinking or how often I was, blacking out or anything like that, because I wasn't ready to talk about any of that. But I would say that my mom probably knew it first before even I knew. But
How about did your friend have your best friend or whoever it was did they have a drinking problem, or they just,
no.
Did they approach you? Hey, Cierra, I hate to say this to you, but you need to back off. And if so, how did you respond?
Yeah, actually, that was a really tough situation. So last year, I actually had a miscarriage, and after that, I think in one day I drank 3 bottles of champagne, and I was just drunk and acting out. And my friend sent me this message, and she said, "I love you, but I cannot support you tearing your life down like this, and you're better than this, and you've grown more than this, and I can't be around you if this is how you're going to behave." And that's when the real quest of like stopping was.
Were you receptive or were you angry when you first got that?
I was receptive, but I was sad. I wasn't really angry with her because I was just more worried that she wasn't going to be in my life anymore. Because we've already gone through a period where we didn't talk for a couple of years, and that's a whole other story. But it felt like something was missing when she wasn't in my life, and I couldn't bear the thought of that happening again. And so I was sober for 2 months after that.
Did you talk to her that right at that day and say thank you? And
it wasn't that day, but I did talk to her pretty soon after that, and I was like, that's what I needed to hear. And she's like, I didn't want it to be too harsh, but you needed to hear that, like, I can't support you when you're being self-destructive like this. And I'm very grateful for that, because it did start getting the wheels turning a little harder. And like I said, I was sober for 2 months after that. But then I thought I could drink again and that I would be able to moderate, or I had a healthier relationship with alcohol. And,
tell me about those first 2 weeks or those first 2 months. Was it just a white knuckle thing? Was it easier than you thought? How did you?
Oh, it was hard. It was impossible because I didn't want to tell anybody about it. So I was trying to do it by myself. I told maybe 3 friends that I wasn't drinking. And then, so I isolated myself. I wouldn't tell anybody that I was sober. I wasn't putting myself in any situations where there would be alcohol, because I didn't know that I could, refrain from drinking. I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I just figured that like people would treat me like a leper because I was in my 20s and I was an alcoholic. And
yeah,
so it was really tough, and I was white knuckling it, and I didn't ask for help from anybody. I just said, this is my goal and this is what I'm going to do. And, I kept it as much of a secret as I possibly could. I spent so many years like drinking, and so everybody knew that like if I come to the party, I'm going to be the life of the party and I'm going to get drunk with you. And so I just kind of reclused, and I took some time to heal, and and then ultimately I started drinking again because I didn't have any help. I didn't ask for any help, and I didn't have any sober community or connections.
Were you talking with that friend during that time? As far as, was she checking on you, and were you saying? Because so much of what I guess where I'm going with this, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but the moral of what I'm hearing was exactly what my life wasn't for so long, was doing exactly what talking to someone, because I held all of it in. So I didn't get a chance. So all that, and I was doomed to failure because I never opened up with anyone, because I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I was frightened, all the emotions.
Yeah, all of it. I talked to her a little bit, but I can't say that I was like truly honest with her about it. I mean, and it all comes back to not being honest with myself. And really until early this year when I started seeing a therapist, I wasn't even honest with the previous therapist I was seeing. Mm-hmm. I didn't act like my alcohol use was any kind of problem. And I still, even when I did spend those 2 months sober, I didn't I didn't act like I had a problem. I just thought I was taking a break, and I just treated it as a break and not a permanent thing or a lifestyle change. So I think ultimately that's why it didn't work or it didn't last or stick on any of these times, because anytime I ever tried to get sober, I kept it in secret, or I disguised it as I'm doing dry January or, sober October or whatever. And I never made it past 2 weeks in any of those challenges.
You know what? For me, those are the hold your breath method. I can go underwater and hold my breath for a little bit. I can't stay underwater that way.
Yeah.
So the hold the breath thing might work for a month. And because I know that, okay, I just got to hold my breath for a minute. It's going to be tough, but as soon as I'm done with a minute, I can come up, and then it's fine. I can gulp all the air I want. And that was the reward, because, to not have the reward of then I can drink afterwards, or I can go back to drinking. I was like, well, there's no incentive to do this. So I got to quit. And that's the reward, is that I'm going to not be able to drink for the rest of my life. Well, that sucks.
Yeah. And the easy part is like, I would have these conversations with my mom, and she said that in rehab, people my age always relapse because the thought of not drinking forever is so huge. And that was so true for me too, because I was like, I can just never drink again. I can't go to France and have wine. I can't have champagne at my wedding. It's like all these things and it was such a punishment for such a long time. Like, oh, I can't drink at this event, or I have to spend the rest of my life. That's a long time not to drink. And so that held me back for a long time too, because I didn't know life outside of alcohol. Every event that I went to, I was drinking. Every activity, floating down the river, you name it. And we were drinking, or we were day drinking, or we drank before or after, there was always drinking. And so when you're stuck in that cycle, it's like you can't see that there's life outside of alcohol. And so you think that when you quit, your life is just over and you're never going to have fun again, and everything is just the end of the world. And so that was so hard for me to quit, because I was like, well, what am I going to do? Just be sober and hang out with my dog for the rest of my life? That's boring. But I found the complete opposite to be true. I mean,
yep.
I've said it, on my Instagram, like, everybody else might have thought I was happy or I was okay, but I was a shell of a human. I had no characteristics, no personality, no substance to myself. And, if I wasn't drinking, I wasn't confident and I was shy. And now that I'm spending time in sobriety, I have so much confidence, and it's just natural. And I can talk about myself, or, things that I like to do, or have a conversation with substance that I'm going to remember. And I think that really that's what life is about. It's not about faking a bubbly personality to get by, or to have socialization. There's so much community and socialization outside of alcohol. And when you finally learn that there is life beyond booze, I mean, it just opens a whole new world.
Well, that was because, when I quit, I was in the I have to live this way. I have to be sober. I've screwed up. I can't drink, so I have to live I have to. And I never would have believed that I get to would ever come out of my lips. It's like, okay, I like to have fun. I'm not a boring dork that wants, no, you get to sit at home on a Friday night and read War and Peace, and really get in touch with your emotions. No, that's not a get to. That's a have to hell for me. But the get tos, I didn't think there were get tos, and now I get to, and I don't know what your get tos are, but you get to realize, you get to enjoy the gets that you didn't think existed are there, and that's what I'm having a lot of fun with these days. I get to experience things I never could have gotten to with drinking.
Yeah. When I first heard that phrase, I get to not drink, I rolled my eyes so hard, right?
Yeah.
Because in the beginning, when you first quit drinking, I mean, the first time or however many times it takes you until it sticks, like, you have that thought of, I have to stop drinking. am a screw up. Like, I have to stop drinking. I can't handle alcohol. I can't moderate. You put all these negative connotations on it, but I never thought that I would say I get to be sober. I never thought that that was a phrase that I would utter either.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, I thought that this was going to be a year-long break, and that's how I started. But, as every day goes by, I cannot see me drinking again. Like, my life is too fulfilled, and it's too good, and it's too joyous now. And I know that there's hard times, because I've had hard days even after I hit that joyous point. But those days are nothing compared to when I was drinking.
Do you think at this point, and obviously you know where I'm going with what the truth is, but that's just my truth. Do you think in a year you could go back to drinking and be a normal drinker?
No.
Do you have that?
No. I think that I want to believe that, and I think that I started this goal out with that thought in mind, that this was going to change my relationship. But I have had a lot of time to process that thought and get real with myself. And it was not an easy realization, but I know that one drink will turn into two, will turn into three, will turn back into the cycle that I was in, because that's what I was used to. And I have a hard time with failure. And so, like, if I have a bachelorette party coming up where I'm the maid of honor, and I've planned this out, right? And I had this thought the other day, and I was like, well, if I just had like a mimosa at the bachelorette party, then I would be okay. I can just have one and be fine. And then I know that in my own brain, what my head is going to say is, well, you've already screwed up your goal, so you might as well get trashed.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that if I have that thought process now, that in a year, just because I took a year off from drinking, that's going to come back. And so, at some point I'm going to be sad, and I'm going to feel like a failure, and then I'm going to be blacked out. And maybe that time I'm going to drive my car and kill someone or myself, and I can't live with that. And so I don't remember when it was or what exact day it was, but there was a point when I realized that this is my forever now. And I'm okay with that now, because I can process like how my brain is going to work. And I just know that I'm not going to be a person that can moderate. I'm not going to be a person that can have a healthy relationship with alcohol. And that's okay, because alcohol, at the end of the day, alcohol is a toxin, and it's an addictive substance. And it isn't my fault that I don't react well to it.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't my fault that the way that my brain is made up is just not one that can handle drinking. And I
didn't believe that, but you look at me with a beer and my wife with a beer, and I go that direction after beer, and she goes, and I have no clue how she can only have one or two and be happy and choose, not discipline herself not to drink, not want to drink. Is her, no, I don't. Yeah, I could have another if I wanted. I have no desire to. It's like, how does anyone? I don't get that at all.
That was not me. If I started drinking, I was never a person that would moderate or could moderate. Once I started, it was floodgates open. So
when you had the 2 months and it didn't work, round two, how did that one go?
Oh gosh.
And how did you what did you do differently in round two, and how did that end?
Well, there's been about a 2-year process of me creating reward systems for myself. And, if I didn't drink for a week, then I would buy myself a new pair of shoes. Or if I didn't drink for a month, then I would get my nails done. And none of that ever worked. And that was just me kind of using it as punishment again, or like saying like,
So you're in torn Chuck Taylors, and your nails are about 6 inches long, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So
gotcha.
I tried to make all these like reward systems for myself, or just drink on weekends. And I just tried to set up all these barriers for myself, and it made me feel more locked down. It made me feel like, just a failure, because I would inevitably not make that happen. And this went on for about 2 years of, try to do the sober Octobers, only make it in 10 days. And then I'm drinking, the same process over and over again. And this last time, This one stuck for 4 months so far, and the difference was I found sober people that I could talk to. And for me, it wasn't AA, and for me, it wasn't like rehab or a program, but I literally just got on Facebook, or not Facebook, but Instagram, looked up the hashtag sober, started following a bunch of people, and reached out. And
How did you reach out? How did that?
I
For the
found,
person that's shy and is seeing, those. How did you?
so there's a great page. It's called 1,000 Hours Dry, and they have a lot of subgroups. So I followed the 1,000 Hour Dry and a bunch of their subgroups, and then on 1,000 Hour Dry Babes page, I just DM'd one day and answered a question or asked a question, and one of the hosts, Kelly, she reached out to me, and we just started DMing on Instagram, and I was struggling really bad, but I didn't know how to make it stick, and she just kept listening to me. And honestly, after about a week, I was kind of feeling myself pull away again and try to hide the drinking issue. And she messaged me just out of the blue and asked me how I was doing, and asked me to join her group, the East Coast Sober Squad, which is just a Slack group of a bunch of sober women or sober curious women. And I was not ready for it. I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to talk to people I didn't know. And I definitely didn't want to talk about, my alcohol problem. But I went out of my comfort zone, and I went ahead and joined the group. And for the first few meetings that I attended, I didn't even have my mic on. I didn't talk. But I started seeing that there were people in their 20s and in any age, there were women my age that drank like me, that struggled like me, that had the same thoughts that I had, that I thought that I was the only person who at 28, 29 was having these struggles and these thoughts. And that's just not true. You're not alone. You're not alone in these dark spaces in your mind, like your mind wants to make you feel like you are. And at the same time that I finally was reaching out, I was still in therapy, and I told my therapist that, and she got real with me, and it was a real hard session. And I just let her know that, I'm going to try this, and I don't know that it's going to be permanent, but we're going to try to do a year break. And I had every excuse in the book not to. I have a wedding and a bachelorette party, and, just anything under the sun that you want to drink at. So I just stopped using those excuses, and I set the goal. And like I said, now I have been realistic with myself, and I've been able to talk to other people and, learned ways to cope with how I'm feeling. My favorite acronym for when you're having a stressful time or you feel like you want to drink is HALT. And so, like, a lot of times when you are feeling that kind of trigger to drink, a lot of times you're either hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And so when I'm having that moment where I feel like I'm having a stressful day, or I'm, wanting to drink, I stop and I think about that. And I'm like, wow, I'm 3 out of 4 of these, or I'm 4 out of 4 of these right now. And that's why I'm feeling this way. And there's other ways to deal with your emotions than masking it with alcohol. All alcohol is going to do is make me cry or angry or go do something stupid or something I regret or embarrass myself again. And I'm tired of feeling that way. And, I really think that I just had to get fed up with myself. Like I said, I started at rock bottom, and everything following that was just, a dangerous cycle and stupid actions and embarrassing moments. So until
how are you planning? Because you hear a lot in this, what, I really got to quit, but and my wife or my daughter's wedding is next month, and I got to do the toast. There's no way I'm going to be able to. I can't get through that wedding. That week's going to be brutal. We're going on vacation with the Smiths and the Joneses, and all we do is drink. They're bringing. I can't until that's over. Well, you know what? Those events happen. There's always an event like that in our lives. How are you going to get through as a the maid of honor? You're going to be doing this, and it ain't going to be with coffee. So, what is your plan?
You just have to really prepare yourself. So, I am obviously very open about my sobriety now, which took me a while. You know, I've let people in, and my best friend already knows. So I have just had to have confidence in the fact that I'm sober and not hide or behind it anymore. But really what you have to do is find connections to people who understand what you're going through. And you have to create a backup plan for yourself. You have to set yourself up for success, because if you set yourself up for failure, you're going to fail. But if you set yourself up for success, then you have a higher chance of actually succeeding. You know, if you get your non-alcoholic drinks, if those don't trigger you, if you get your sparkling water, you can drink it out of a champagne glass. You know, you can do a toast with that. And if you get uncomfortable, you have to understand that you have to set your boundaries. And if something makes you uncomfortable, you have to be strong enough to stick to that boundary and say, I'm uncomfortable here. This situation's not right for me. I love you, but I got to go. You know, and instead of like pressuring yourself into something that you know is not good for you, you know, it's such a mind battle, and it's so hard, but you have to set yourself up for success. You have to put all the pieces into play before you get there, and you have to be prepared for whatever situations happen. And you got to be strong and confident in yourself to know that, like, I know what's right for me more than you know what's right for me. So, you know, there are going to be people that want you to drink with them, and there are going to be people that know you as that old version, but you have to create this new version of you and set your boundaries and just believe in yourself. Because at the end of the
What
day,
are you going to say when someone, and I can't thank you enough for being as open as you are. And I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but what are you going to say when someone brings you, here, I brought you old times. Here's the Jameson.
you know, 4 months ago, I probably would have drank it. But today, if somebody brought that to me, I would, I have a couple of responses, depends on my mood. But I would tell them no, that I don't drink anymore and that I have my own drink. You know, like a lot of good tips that I've seen recently with, you know, the Babes page and stuff that I've seen, is have a sparkling water already in your hand. You know, if somebody's offering you a drink, I have a drink. I'm good. You know, and if somebody were to be that disrespectful to me to come and offer me a drink, with as open as I am about my sobriety, that would show me more about that person than myself. So yeah, I would say no, because I'm in that place, but I know the place where you can't say no, and that's hard. So in that case, you just have to really be prepared to walk away from that person.
I could have caved so easily. In fact, I remember a buddy of mine, I think I was on a month and a half. This is way back, one of my earlier attempts. And we laugh about it now because I walked in and, well, you won't know who Otis is from Andy Griffith's series, but on the football team, I was one of the Otises. And he saw me, and I was on 40 days. I'm good. He walked up, he said, Otis, and gave me a beer. And I was like, thank you. And it was like, I snapped like that. I didn't even put up a fight.
Yeah.
Because I was around a bunch of people that the record would have skipped or scratched if I had said, no,
Yeah.
thank you, I'm not drinking.
Yeah. And that's the hard part is you have to know when to say no to situations if you know that that's going to be your response. Because if at 40 days, if we would have been going on this bachelorette party 2 months ago instead of in August, I don't think that I would have been sober through it. Mm-hmm. But I have no doubt in my mind now that I'm not going to drink at that bachelorette party, you know, because I've gained that strength. But if there was a situation and I thought that I was going to put myself in danger or in danger of drinking, then I would say, no, I can't go, you know, and that's okay. Like, you hear the phrase, no is a complete sentence all the time, and it is. And you don't have to explain yourself, and you don't have to feel bad for saying no either.
I try to take me out of the equation for making the choice. So when I walk into a place, I mean, I have my coffee now, but people see me with a Diet Pepsi. I walk into parties or those occasions, I already have the choice made of what's in my hand. I don't want to have to be at the bar going, what would you like to put in your hand? I've already made that choice. And
Yeah.
it's like, you need a beer? Oh, I'm good. You need a drink? No, I'm good. I got, that helps me. It's those, but the word you're hitting, or the thought you're hitting, which I just love, preparation, because I can't rely on Jeff to make the right decision in those moments. My track record ain't there for that.
Yep.
So I got to take Jeff out of the equation as much as possible.
Yep.
Accountability. Hey, your friends, just so you guys know, I'm fine, but support me here.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking.
Yeah.
That now I got that accountability. My wife, we parties or whatever, and this was especially when I started my sobriety. I'll go, but I reserve the right to get out of there whenever I want. So if we need to drive separate, I'm just saying I'll go, but when it gets loud, obnoxious, unfunny, and everyone, I'm out of there.
Yep.
And if you want to stay, great, but I reserve the right to leave. So I give myself, I'm planning before I have to make the choice. Make the choices before. So
that's crucial. It's so important to plan and to be able to have that exit strategy. If you need to Irish goodbye, just go. You don't owe anyone an explanation.
What's the Irish goodbye?
You leave without saying goodbye.
Yeah.
You walk out the building and you just go. And all these people are gonna, if it is a party where people are primarily drinking, no one's gonna notice that you left.
Right.
They don't know.
I think we are caught up with how. I think when I come in and say, no, I'm not drinking, I'm thinking that everyone is going to just turn. I don't think the truth is no one cares.
Yeah,
they're more. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sierra's not drinking. Okay. So what were you saying about that?
We make it so much worse in our heads because we spend so much time thinking about it. I just had this conversation with another girl recently, and we spend so much time creating this story of what's going to happen if we tell people we're sober. And then half the time when you tell them, they're like, okay. I mean, you do get the questions, right? Like, oh, why aren't you drinking? Or did you have a problem? Mm-hmm. And then, you have to come up with your responses for those. But that's, again, being prepared. I have prepared answers when people ask me why I don't drink. And sometimes I go into detail, and sometimes I ask them if they're going to ask me why I don't eat mayonnaise too. Sometimes you be a smartass, and sometimes you just be honest with them, and, you just go the opposite direction. But we spend so much time being prepared for how people are going to act, and think the world's going to stop spinning just because we don't drink, but it's all in our head. Because half the time when we tell people that we're not drinking, they're like, cool. Okay.
Okay. So you are young, in the dating scene, and I'm going to feel like a leper. How do I go out? I'm in my 20s. I'm in the peak of I'm going to feel like a leper. I'm going to walk in, and some guy's going to want to buy me a drink. And as soon as I say no, he's going to say, well, loser, I'm out of here, nerd, whatever. How do you deal with someone that's going to say, well, it's Friday, it's, the weekend, it's 4th of July weekend. I'm not, call me on Monday or Tuesday morning after the 4th of July. We'll talk about quitting then, but I'm going to have,
Yeah. Honestly, I think dating in 2021 is already hard enough anyway. Funny, actually, I am going on a date after this, but he knows that I'm sober, and, people just know that I'm sober. So I'm very upfront about it. And I actually don't date a lot or go out and put myself in those situations. So, I can't speak for everyone on that, but I am very upfront with it and being like, I'm not going to drink. If you want to have a beer, cool. If you don't have a problem, that's great. But I do, and I'm not going to drink. And I also kind of like, if I am going to date somebody that does drink, that's fine. But I want to see how they behave too, because I don't want to put myself in a situation or be dating somebody that can't control themselves.
Do you have you had any issues around other people that are drinking? And that's, I couldn't care less. The only thing that matters to me is me, but some people can't, and I totally respect that. And you got to do what works for you, essentially.
Yeah, I used to be the person that shut down the bar, and I have gone out, and I have been in situations around people that were drinking and other people that were drinking heavily, and I just excuse myself because after a while it does bother me. or, you start to see, and this actually helps me stay sober too, but I like to see other people acting drunk, and it just reminds me that I used to act like that, and it's not cute and it's not funny half the time. So it's kind of a great reality check if you want to watch other people get drunk, if you can handle that. I personally can, but I know a lot of people can't be around it at all. But for me, it helps me stay sober.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm one of those, I can have it around the house. It's, I don't choose to have it around the house, but, and if we have beer in the house, Elizabeth will make sure that it's not a beer that I like. I don't know if that wouldn't have stopped me before,
Yeah.
but at least she's not taking beer and gift wrapping it with my name on it,
Yeah.
where it's going to be a little more of a temptation.
Yeah. I don't keep it in my house, just because I live alone. So that would just be a recipe. That would be me setting myself up for failure. Again, that's really important for me not to do that, and really important for me to set myself up for success. So I don't keep it around my house, but if I'm going somewhere, it doesn't bother me if it's there.
If you, on the weekend, I assume you still get the craving for, the release, that alcohol gives us. When the cravings hit you, what is your go-to tactic to fend that off?
I've kind of learned the difference in a craving and a trigger recently. So the cravings, I can help kind of curb those. And for me, mocktails work. For me, a seltzer water works. Chatting with some friends that understand, that works. Journaling, I meditate. If it's a really bad day, I'll shut my phone off and take a bubble bath and just Netflix and not talk to anybody. But like the difference in a trigger and a craving,
Tiger King over and over again.
I actually never watched that.
It's the greatest. If you want to feel better about yourself,
watch Tiger.
It's the feel good about yourself series of a lifetime. That's for sure.
But yeah,
my life ain't so bad after watching that.
Exactly. I listened to a podcast, but I never actually watched the Netflix show. So I'm familiar with him, but yeah, I didn't actually watch that.
I would, if I looked in the mirror and saw him, I would start drinking again. That's for sure. I'm trying to think what else. You're doing exactly right. Are there things that your goals for improving, that to get better at, or things, because this isn't a graduate, I'm done, I'm sober, it's over, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
Do you see areas that you're next, I want to improve how I handle this, or what are your growth goals?
Yeah, I think that's really important to talk about too, because being sober is not a cure-all for everything, and I had to learn that really the hard way, and address my depression and my anxiety. I thought that not drinking would make me happy, and it didn't. But now I've started antidepressants and anxiety medicine, and my world is different. So that part of me is healing. What I'm really focused on now is growing intellectually, finishing my college degree, and, just making sure that I learn how to take care of myself and set boundaries.
You're a roofer by trade, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm an admin assistant, but I work for a roofing company.
Okay, I thought you were up there slinging shingles.
Oh,
the thing and that's hard, because taking alcohol away, because that was all my problem, is I drank too much beer. So take that away and my problems go away. Now, all I took away was a coping mechanism that I abused and caused even more problems. But you take it away, I still now have all the problems, and I just lost the only tool I knew how to cope with them, even though it was wrong. I got to relearn all that stuff.
Yeah, I think that could be a whole another hour conversation, because that's so true.
I'll call you tomorrow.
And I think that that's why people kind of fail, is because they think that if they stop drinking it, and that's why I failed so much, is I thought I would stop drinking and life would be this magic fairy tale. And you hear like you hit this pink cloud and all is great, but that's not true. I was depressed and crying every day for the first 2 months of this round of sobriety. And I was like, to the point where I was having just a thought of like, I don't want to do any of this anymore. And then I knew that like, it wasn't the alcohol, because at that point I was sober. So it wasn't the alcohol that made me feel that way, but all this time I was feeling that way and I was drinking to deal with it. And it's just not.
So if someone wants to get a hold of it, can they DM you on this Instagram thing? And if the 1,000 whatever it was,
2 hours dry.
Yeah. So if they have questions, they can get a hold of you through that. So I've got it on the bottom. We'll put the link also on the Getting Back to Zero pages. But I cannot thank you enough. You definitely have to come back. You've got 4 months. No, you got about 4 years of wisdom. So
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me. And anybody, like, you can DM me anytime. I've always got my phone on me. And the 1,000-Hour Drive pages, I'm not a host or anything on there, but they have amazing hosts and people that are always there for you. So if you don't feel like you want to reach out to me, reach out to any of them. They're really great people, and they're a really great support system. They're the reason I'm here today. So.
All right. Well, hang on just a second. So everyone have a safe weekend. Remember, light fuse and get away. Run like hell, and keep the bottle rockets out of where the sun don't shine. Another benefit of quitting alcohol. Some of those decisions go by the wayside. So we will be back Tuesday night, and have a great weekend, everyone. So thanks so much. All right, Cierra, take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.